Listen closely. This is a story about gold, greed, and the kind of fortune that destroys men. Before I tell you what happened to old Jebediah, you need to understand something. The silent river has claimed 17 souls. 17 men who found its gold. 17 men who never left. And Jebediah? He was about to become the 18th. Let me take you back to where it all began. Old Jebediah wasn't always old. Once, 40 years ago, he was young, strong, full of dreams. He kissed his wife goodbye, promised her he'd return with enough gold to build her the house she deserved. That was 1883. He never saw her again. She died waiting. He spent 4 decades chasing shadows, following rumors, digging holes that led nowhere. His hands became leather, his hair turned white, his dreams turned to dust. Every creek, every mountain, every whispered tale of gold, he followed them all, and every single one was a lie. Until the day everything changed. It was late September when Jebediah stumbled through a gap in the canyon walls he'd somehow missed on every previous pass through this God-forsaken valley. The sun was setting, painting the rocks blood red. And there it was, the silent river. Now, you're probably wondering why they called it silent. It wasn't the water. The water rushed and gurgled like any other mountain stream. It was called silent because of what it did to men. It made them disappear, silently, without a trace. The local tribes wouldn't go near it. They had stories going back generations about the river that whispers, the river that takes, the river that keeps. But Jebediah didn't know these stories. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't care anymore. Because when he knelt by that water and saw what lay beneath the surface, his heart stopped. Gold. Not flakes, not dust, nuggets, thick as a man's thumb, some big as walnuts. They covered the riverbed like cobblestones glittering in the dying light. He plunged his hand into the ice-cold water and pulled one out. Heavy, real. After 40 years of fool's gold and broken dreams, this was it. The mother lode, the big strike, the thing he'd sacrificed everything to find. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest. The sound filled his ears, a wild, frantic drumbeat of triumph mixed with disbelief. He laughed, actually laughed. The sound was strange, rusty, like he'd forgotten how. Tears streamed down his weathered face, cutting clean trails through the dust. Rich! After all these years, all the suffering, all the loss, he was finally, impossibly rich. He could barely breathe. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped the nugget. This was enough gold to buy a mansion. No, a dozen mansions. Enough to live like a king for whatever years he had left. But then the laughter died in his throat, choked off like someone had wrapped a hand around his windpipe, because he saw something else. Near the far bank, half hidden by a curtain of weeping willows, was a pile of stones, deliberately stacked, carefully arranged. A grave. His prospector's eye caught more details. The stones were old, settled deep into the earth. Moss grew thick on their north sides. This grave wasn't recent. Someone had been here. Someone had found what he just found. And that someone never left. He moved closer, his euphoria curdling into something else, something cold. Near the grave, scattered in the undergrowth, were tools, a pickaxe head, rusted almost through, the wooden handle long since rotted away, a broken shovel bent at an unnatural angle, a tin cup, crushed flat. And there, half buried in silt, was a leather pouch, rotted and empty. But he knew what it had held. Gold, just like what he was looking at. Someone had been here. Someone had found the silent river's secret, and something had gone very, very wrong. The fortune that had felt like salvation just moments before now felt heavy, tainted, like the gold itself was watching him with malevolent eyes. But what was he supposed to do? Walk away? After 40 years? After everything he'd lost? Everything he'd sacrificed? No, he couldn't. He wouldn't. The gold was here. It was real. And it was his. He had found it. He deserved it. He began to gather the nuggets, his hands still shaking, but now for different reasons. He pulled out worn leather pouches from his pack, the same pouches he'd carried empty for decades, always optimistic, always ready for the strike that never came. Now they grew heavy, gloriously, terrifyingly heavy. 1 pouch, 2, 3, 4. The weight was intoxicating. Each nugget that dropped into the leather with a satisfying thunk was a promise of the life he'd always dreamed of. But the light was fading fast now. The canyon walls cast long shadows across the water, and those shadows seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Every snap of a twig made him jump, his hand flying to the old revolver at his hip. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps, like someone or something was watching him from the darkening forest. The grave seemed closer than it had been. The broken tools seemed to have moved. His imagination, surely, had to be. But his heart wouldn't slow down. The drumbeat of triumph had become a drumbeat of fear. He worked faster, more frantically, stuffing gold into every pouch, every pocket. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to be careful, to be methodical, to mark this spot and return with proper equipment. But another part, a deeper, more primitive part, told him to take everything he could carry right now, to never come back, to run. Because the silent river had kept its secret for a reason, and he had just broken the silence. As full darkness fell and he finally staggered away from the bank, his pack heavy enough to make his old bones ache, Jebediah understood something fundamental had changed. He had found the legendary silent river. He had claimed its gold, but he had also inherited something else. Something he saw in that lonely grave, in those rusted tools, in the way the shadows moved. He had inherited the river's terrible burden, the curse that came with the fortune. Fear became his shadow that night, clinging closer than his own breath, following him back to his hidden camp, sitting beside him as he tried to sleep, whispering to him in the darkness. And somewhere in the night, over the sound of the river that was never really silent, he could have sworn he heard laughter, cold, mocking, ancient. The silent river had given him what he wanted. Now it would take its payment. It always did.
What would you do with cursed gold? Would you spend it, throw it away, or would you hold on to it, knowing it might kill you, because after losing everything else, it's all you have left? Jebediah chose to hold on, and that choice changed everything. 3 months passed. You wouldn't recognize him. The triumphant prospector who'd found his fortune was gone, replaced by something else, something hunted. The gold sat buried under the floorboards of his crude cabin, wrapped in oilcloth, hidden in a hole he'd dug by candlelight. He hadn't spent a single nugget, hadn't shown it to anyone, hadn't even really looked at it since that first night, because looking at it meant remembering. And remembering meant feeling that presence, that weight, that sense of being watched by something that didn't want to be found. His hair had gone completely white, not the white of age, but the white of shock, of fear sustained so long it becomes your natural state. He'd lost 30 pounds. His hands trembled constantly now, even when he wasn't thinking about the gold, which was never. He was always thinking about the gold, every waking moment and in his dreams too. Dark dreams of men clawing their way out of graves, their skeletal hands reaching for his throat, demanding back what he'd stolen. The wilderness had become his fortress, his isolation his shield. He'd always been a loner, but now he actively avoided the supply towns, the other prospectors, any human contact. He told himself it was safer this way, that people asked questions, that someone might follow him, might discover his claim. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was terrified that if anyone got close, they'd see it, the madness, the guilt, the thing that the gold had turned him into. Then came the afternoon that shattered his careful isolation. It was July, the kind of scalding day that makes the air shimmer and turns thoughts liquid. Heat mirages danced across the desert floor. Jebediah was checking his snares, moving through his routine with the mechanical precision of a man trying not to think. That's when he saw it. A flicker of movement on the horizon. His heart seized. Not an animal. The movement was wrong. Too upright. Too purposeful. Human. His first instinct was to run, to hide, to grab his rifle and defend his claim against whoever was coming, because they were coming for him, for his gold. Everyone was always coming for his gold, even though no one knew about it, especially because no one knew about it. The paranoia had teeth now, and they were sinking deep. But he didn't run. Something kept him watching as the figure stumbled closer, weaving like a drunk, moving with the desperate, uncoordinated motion of someone at the absolute end of their endurance. And then the figure collapsed, just dropped, face first near the little spring that was the only water source for miles, the spring Jebediah thought was his secret, the spring that had just betrayed him by saving someone else's life. He approached cautiously, rifle ready, finger on the trigger. Every instinct screamed danger, trap, ambush. The gold had taught him that everyone was an enemy, every situation a threat. But when he got close enough to see clearly, his finger eased off the trigger. It was a woman, young, maybe 25. Her clothes were torn to rags. Her exposed skin burned raw by the sun. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her face was bruised, not from the fall, but from before. Someone had hit her, multiple times, recently. He stood there for a long moment, rifle pointed at her unconscious form, having an argument with himself. Leave her. She's not your problem. She'll die here and you'll be safe. Your secret will be safe. That's what the gold whispered. That's what the fear demanded. But there was still a tiny part of old Jebediah left, buried deep under the paranoia and terror. The part that remembered being human, that remembered his wife's voice saying, "You're a good man, Jeb. Don't let this world make you forget that." He lowered the rifle, cursed himself for a fool, and went to save her. She was burning up with fever, delirious from thirst and sun exposure. He trickled water between her cracked lips, just a little at a time so she wouldn't choke. She coughed, sputtered, her eyes rolling beneath closed lids. He could see her dreams weren't pleasant. She kept whimpering, flinching away from things only she could see. When she finally opened her eyes, they were wild with terror, unfocused. She tried to scramble away from him, her body too weak to obey, her voice a broken rasp. "Please, no more. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet." "Easy now," he heard himself say, his own voice unfamiliar from disuse. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe." What a lie that was. Safe. Nothing was safe. Not here. Not with him. Not with the cursed gold buried under his floorboards. But she believed him, or was too weak to do anything else. She let him lift her, God, she weighed nothing, and carry her back toward his cabin. Each step felt like a betrayal of his isolation, his security, his secret. He was carrying a stranger directly to the place where he'd hidden the fortune that men had killed for, men had died for. What was he thinking? But her name she whispered later through cracked lips that he'd smeared with bacon grease to help them heal, was Ilara. Just Ilara. And she was fleeing, running from something, someone, danger, men. Her story came out in fragments over the next few days as she slowly regained strength, pieces of a nightmare that never quite formed a complete picture. She'd been with a man, not her husband, she said quickly, fiercely. A man she'd trusted, a man who'd gotten involved with something bad, stolen something, and then men had come, hard men with guns and dead eyes. They'd taken him, and they'd... She couldn't finish that sentence, wouldn't. The bruises told enough of that story. She'd escaped, ran. For days, maybe weeks, she'd lost track of time. They'd chased her at first, but the desert had swallowed her. She'd thought they'd given up. She'd thought she was free. She'd thought wrong. But she didn't know that yet. Neither did they. Against every instinct screaming at him to protect his claim, to maintain his isolation, to turn her away before she discovered his secret, Jebediah made a choice. He cleared a space in the corner of his cabin, gave her his spare blanket, shared his meager supplies, dried meat, hardtack, the beans he'd been rationing. He tended her wounds with the clumsy care of a man who'd forgotten how to be gentle. It was an act of reluctant mercy in a land that offered little. A crack in the wall of his solitude, a small, unwelcome crack that was about to split wide open. Because the silent river's curse didn't just affect the man who'd stolen the gold. It affected everyone who came near him, everyone who stayed. And Elara, broken and desperate, had nowhere else to go. She was trapped here now, with him, with his secret, with his curse. And the silent river? It was watching. It was always watching, waiting to see what would happen when two desperate, damaged people were locked together with a fortune that demanded blood. The river knew. It had seen this story play out many times before. And it always ended the same way, in graves and silence.
Here's what nobody tells you about paranoia. It's contagious, like a disease that spreads through the air, infecting everyone in its radius. Jebediah had it bad, and Elara, she was about to catch it too. The cabin was 12 feet by 12 feet, rough-hewn gogs chinked with mud. One window with actual glass, a luxury Jebediah had packed in years ago when he still believed in creature comforts. One door that didn't quite close right, leaving a gap that let in cold air, and, he increasingly believed, prying eyes. Two people in that space wasn't cozy, it was suffocating. A pressure cooker with the heat turned up high and no release valve. As Elara slowly mended, as her bruises faded from purple to yellow to green, as her strength returned and she started moving around the cabin, Jebediah descended deeper into madness. He watched her, constantly, every move, every glance, every footstep. Did she hear the slight hollow sound the floorboards made over his hiding spot? Did she notice how he always kept himself between her and that particular corner? Did her eyes linger too long on his boots when he came back from his check of the perimeter with fresh dirt on them? He started burying the pouches deeper. At first, they'd been 1 foot down, wrapped in oilcloth. Now they were 3 feet deep, in a hole he dug in the dead of night while Elara slept, or pretended to sleep. He wasn't sure which. Could you ever really be sure someone was sleeping? Maybe she was watching him through slitted eyes. Maybe she knew everything. Maybe she was playing him, waiting for the right moment to strike, to steal what was his. He checked the hiding spot obsessively, multiple times a day. He'd touch the floorboards just to reassure himself they were still slightly raised, still hiding his secret. At night, he'd press his ear to the floor, listening to what? The heartbeat of the earth? The whisper of gold calling to those who would take it? The ghosts of the men who died for it? He didn't know. He just knew he had to listen.
His kindness curdled into suspicion. The food he shared felt like a mistake. She was getting stronger on his supplies, strong enough to overpower him maybe. The water he gave her was wasted water that could extend his own survival when everything inevitably went wrong. Because it would go wrong. It always went wrong. The silent rever made sure of that. But here's the thing about Ilara. She wasn't stupid. She was quiet and watchful, but not because she was plotting. She was quiet and watchful because she'd learned the hard way that survival meant understanding the danger around you before it understood you. And Jebediah? He was danger. She saw it clearly. Saw the way he started at every small noise, a mouse in the walls, the wind, the cabin settling. Saw the way his hand constantly strayed to the pistol tucked in his belt, his fingers drumming against the grip like he was itching to draw. Saw the way he muttered to himself when he thought she wasn't listening, having conversations with people who weren't there. She recognized that look in his eyes. Oh God, did she recognize it? It was the look her father had worn after he'd found silver on their land. The hunted, haunted look of a man consumed by something he couldn't control, something that was eating him from the inside out. She'd watched that look destroy her father, watched it turn him from a kind man into a monster who trusted no one, feared everyone, and ultimately died alone, killed by the very men he'd been trying to protect his silver from. And now, she was trapped in a 12-by-12 cabin with another man wearing that same look. The shadow of greed, long and cold, falling even here, in this remote corner of the world where she'd thought she might finally be safe. The silence between them grew heavy, thick, like the air before a thunderstorm, pregnant with electricity and danger. They'd have whole days where they barely spoke, where every word felt like a landmine that might trigger something terrible. She'd say, "Good morning," and he'd grunt, his eyes flickering to the floorboards. She'd ask, "Is there more water?" and he'd jump like she'd fired a gun, his hand going to his pistol before his rational brain caught up. But there were moments, brief, fragile moments, when the old Jebediah would surface. When he'd share a story about his prospecting days, his voice soft with memory. When he'd smile at something she said, a real smile that reached his eyes. When he'd carefully adjust the blanket she was using, a gesture of care that seemed to surprise him as much as her. Those moments gave her hope. Hope that the man wasn't completely lost. Hope that maybe, somehow, they could survive this strange, tense coexistence. She was wrong, because the silent river doesn't let go. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't offer redemption. It takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left but bones and regrets. Ilara started noticing other things too, disturbing things. Jebediah had carved marks on the wall near his bedroll, tallies, but they weren't counting days. They were too numerous for that, and they didn't follow any pattern of daily marking. Sometimes there'd be 5 marks in a row, sometimes none for what looked like a week. She studied them when he was outside, trying to understand. Then it hit her. He was marking every time he checked the hiding spot, every time he convinced himself his secret was still safe. There were hundreds of marks, maybe thousands, covering months. She found other signs of his deterioration. A journal tucked under his bedroll, filled with increasingly erratic handwriting. The early entries were normal, notes about weather, supplies, prospecting plans, but they devolved into paranoid rambles about shadows, about being watched, about graves that move when you're not looking. The last entry, dated just a week before she'd arrived, was a single sentence repeated over and over until it filled the entire page. They know, they know, they know, they know. Who knows? What do they know?
She dared not ask. She also found a knife hidden under his pillow, another in his boot, a third tucked behind a loose board near the door. A man preparing for war, or a man so terrified of his own shadow that he needed weapons within reach at all times. The weight of the unsaid things pressed down on them both, her secrets, the full truth of what she was running from, what really happened, why those men might still be coming. His secrets, the gold, the graves, the curse he'd inherited. They circled each other like wary animals, both predator and prey simultaneously, neither able to break the terrible tension or bear to continue it. At night, lying in her corner while Jebediah tossed and turned in his, Ilara would stare at the ceiling and wonder which would kill her first, whatever was hunting her from her past, or whatever was consuming Jebediah from the inside out. Some nights, she'd catch herself looking at the door, calculating distances, planning escape routes. But where would she go? Back into the desert that had nearly killed her? Toward the towns where the men who'd hurt her might be waiting? No. She was trapped, just as surely as Jebediah had locked chains around her ankles. Trapped by circumstance, by exhaustion, by the simple fact that staying in this cabin with this increasingly unstable man was somehow still safer than any alternative she could imagine. The cabin had become a prison, but prisons have a way of breaking people, and something was going to break soon. She could feel it building, like pressure behind a dam. The question wasn't if, the question was when, and who would survive the flood.
Winter didn't arrive. It attacked. Like the sky itself had declared war on every living thing below it. And in that 12 by 12 cabin, Jebediah and Ilara were about to learn that sometimes the real danger isn't what's outside. It's what's inside with you. Trapped. Inescapable. Growing stronger while you grow weaker. The first snow came in October, earlier than expected. Not the gentle, picturesque snow of paintings and postcards. This was a blizzard, a white wall that erased the world. Within 2 days, snow had drifted halfway up the cabin walls. The door wouldn't open. The window was just a square of white, no light getting through, no way to see out. They were buried, entombed in wood and ice. The temperature dropped so fast, their breath formed clouds indoors. Every morning, Ilara would wake to find a thin layer of ice had formed on the inside of the walls. The cabin wasn't built for this kind of cold. The gaps between the logs let in wind that cut like knives. They stuffed rags and spare clothes into the cracks, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Supplies dwindled at an alarming rate. The dried meat Jebediah had stockpiled for one person over winter now had to stretch between 2. The beans that should have lasted months would be gone in weeks. The coffee, the precious coffee that was the only real luxury in this frozen hell, was rationed to 1 cup per day, and even that might not last. They were going to run out. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. Long before spring came, they'd be facing starvation. The fire became everything. Their god, their obsession, their reason for existence. It couldn't go out. If it went out, they would die. It was that simple. So they fed it constantly, carefully, burning through their woodpile faster than Jebediah had planned, because he'd only planned for one person. For normal cold, not for this apocalyptic winter that showed no signs of mercy. When the wood got low, Jebediah had to dig his way out through the snow. A tunnel, really,
like a mine shaft heading up to the surface. It took him 4 hours of brutal work to reach air. His fingers went numb. His lungs burned from the cold and exertion. He gathered what wood he could from the lean-to, working in a panic because the storm was still raging, and if the tunnel collapsed, he'd be buried, dead, frozen solid, and Alara would be trapped inside with his corpse until spring, if she lasted that long. The forced intimacy was destroying what little sanity Jebediah had left. There was nowhere to go, no privacy, no escape from each other's presence. They ate together, slept in the same small room, breathed the same recycled air. Every sound she made, every breath, every movement, every time she shifted in her sleep drove nails into her fraying nerves. His dreams grew worse. Dark, twisted things where the dead men from the graves clawed their way into the cabin, where Alara's face melted away to reveal something horrible underneath, where the gold under the floorboards was alive, pulsing like a beating heart, calling out to everyone in 100 miles, "Here! He's here! Come and take it! Kill him and take it!" He'd wake up screaming, his hand on his pistol, pointing it at shadows until he remembered where he was. Alara learned to stay very still when he woke like that, learned not to speak until he'd calmed down, learned that sudden movements might get her shot. He started muttering constantly, conversations with himself, arguments with people who weren't there. She'd hear him at night, his voice low and urgent. "No, no, you can't have it. I found it. It's mine. I earned it. Go away. Leave me alone. Just leave me alone." Sometimes he'd cry, actually sob like a child. She'd pretend to sleep through it, giving him that small dignity, because what else could she do? The silence between them once had been heavy. Now it was a living thing, a presence that filled the cabin more completely than either of them did. Days would pass without a real conversation, just the bare minimum of communication needed to survive. "We need more wood. The meat is running low. I'll check the snares." Functional, emotionless, safe. But one night, the silence finally cracked, broke open like ice under too much weight. It was late. The storm was particularly violent outside, the wind howling like something alive and hungry, trying to find a way in. They'd been sitting in the near dark, conserving lamp oil, just staring at the fire. Jebediah was muttering again, his lips moving, his eyes unfocused, and Alara couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't sit there and watch him disappear into madness without trying to pull him back. "What haunts you, old man? It's more than just the cold, more than just the winter. What is it?" He jerked like she'd slapped him. "Nothing. Mind your own business. We're trapped in a cabin barely bigger than a closet. Everything is my business now. I see you, Jebediah. I see what's eating you alive." "You don't see anything." But his voice shook. "I know that look." She leaned forward, her face emerging from the shadows. "My pa had it. When I was 12, he found silver on our land. Just a small vein, but enough. Enough to change everything. Enough to attract attention." Jebediah went very still. "They came like locusts," she continued, her voice softer now, remembering. "First it was men offering to buy the land, fair offers, or what seemed fair to a farmer who'd never seen that much money. But Pa said no, said it was his land, his silver, his fortune. Then the offers got less friendly. Then came the threats. Then," her voice broke, just for a moment. She swallowed hard. "Then they stopped asking." "What happened?" Jebediah whispered, despite himself. "They burned our home. Middle of the night. Pa got me and Ma out, but he went back in, for the silver. He'd hidden it in the house, you see. Couldn't bear to leave it. The smoke got him before the fire did. They found his body clutching a box of silver ore, his fingers burned down to the bone, but still holding on." She looked at Jebediah, her eyes reflecting firelight. "Greed doesn't just take your gold, Jebediah. It takes your soul. It took my pa's, and I see it taking yours." Her words hung in the air like smoke, a mirror reflecting his own terrified heart. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't understand, that his situation was different, but he couldn't, because she did understand. She'd lived it. She'd watched it destroy someone she loved, and now she was watching it happen again. "I'm sorry about your father," he finally said. "So am I, and I'd be sorry about you too if you let it kill you." She settled back into her corner. "Whatever you're hiding, Jebediah, whatever you found out there, ask yourself if it's worth dying for, because from where I'm sitting, you're already halfway in the grave." He didn't respond. Couldn't, because she was right. He was halfway in the grave. Had been since the moment he'd plucked that first nugget from the silent river. The only question was whether he'd climb out or finish the fall. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a different kind of storm had begun. The storm of truth, of confession, of two damaged people finally acknowledging the horror they were living through. It wasn't comfort, it wasn't healing, but it was honest. And in that frozen cabin, as winter crushed down on them like the weight of the world, honesty was all they had left. The night stretched long. Neither of them slept. They just sat, watching the fire burn down to coals and then building it back up, marking time until dawn, until the next day of survival, until the next test of how much they could endure. The silent river was frozen solid now, miles away through the snow. But its curse wasn't frozen. Curses never sleep. They wait. They watch. They prepare for the moment when everything falls apart. And in that cabin, as winter crushed down on them like the weight of the world, that moment was coming soon.
There's a moment in every disaster when you can still turn back. One choice, one decision, one word that could change everything. This was that moment for Jebediah. The question was, would he take it? Or would the silent river claim another soul? Alara's story had cracked something open in Jebediah. Not broken, cracked, like ice breaking up in spring, the first splits before the whole thing shatters. He'd spent months locked inside his own head, convinced his fear was unique, his curse his alone to bear. But here was someone who understood, who'd lived through the destruction that gold, silver, fortune, any kind of fortune could bring. The shared experience of loss, the recognition of that same corrosive fear eating them both from the inside out. 3 days after their conversation, the storm finally broke. The wind died, the snow stopped. The world went silent and white, and painfully, blindingly bright. Jebediah dug his way out to check the traps, desperate for fresh meat, and Alara came with him. He didn't want her to, wanted to keep her in the cabin where he could, what? Watch her, control her, ensure she didn't find anything? But he was too weak to argue. They both needed to move, needed to see the sky again, needed to remember the world was bigger than 12 by 12 feet. They walked through the drifts in silence, following the paths Jebediah had established before the big storm. That's when Alara saw it. Near the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by a snow-covered pine, a wooden cross, rough-hewn, simple,
The snow had drifted around it, but someone had carved words into the crossbeam. She moved closer, brushing away snow. The words were weathered, but still legible. Here lies hope. Just a marker, Jebediah said, quickly, too quickly. Old Prospector camp. Happened to cross it when I first came here. But Alara was already moving through the trees, because where there was one cross, there might be more. And she found them. 2 more graves. One marked, "Here lies trust." Another, "Here lies brotherhood." All near the river, she could see the frozen surface glittering through the trees. All old, settled, permanent. 3 graves, 3 messages, 3 deaths. She turned to Jebediah, who'd gone pale as the snow. "It wasn't just one grave, was it, when you found this place? It wasn't just one prospector who died here." His mouth opened, closed. The lies he'd told himself for months tried to form on his lips, but they died there. Her eyes were too knowing, too clear. She'd seen the truth carved in wood and buried in snow. 3, he finally whispered. 3 graves. They went back to the cabin. Jebediah built up the fire, while Alara waited, patient but implacable. She wasn't going to let this go. He could feel the weight of her expectation, the pressure of the secret that had been crushing him for so long. And maybe it would be a relief to finally tell someone, to share the burden, even if it destroyed him. He told her everything. The words came slowly at first, then faster, then pouring out like a dam had burst. How he'd found the silent river at sunset, the gold thick as cobblestones beneath the clear water. How his heart had soared with 40 years of hope fulfilled. How he'd found the first grave and felt his triumph curdle to dread. How he'd searched the area and found 2 more. How he'd pieced together the story from what he'd found. Tracks months old but still readable, signs of struggle, broken tools, an abandoned camp. 2 partners struck it rich, found the silent river's gold, worked to claim together for weeks maybe, accumulating a fortune. Then a 3rd man arrived. Maybe he tracked them, maybe he stumbled on them by accident, maybe they invited him to share the claim. 3 men could work faster than 2. However it happened, it went wrong, badly wrong. From the tracks and signs, Jebediah had reconstructed the probable sequence. The 3rd man got greedy, or maybe the original 2 decided they didn't want to share after all. There was a fight. Someone drew a weapon. Could have been a knife, a gun, doesn't matter. Blood was spilled. 1 man died. Then, in the aftermath, trust between the survivors shattered. Maybe one thought the other had been the instigator. Maybe they both realized that with their partner dead, they didn't need to split the gold 2 ways. The 2nd man died hours later, maybe a day, shot in the back from what Jebediah could tell from the old bloodstains he'd found on a rock. Shot by his partner, his friend, his brother in fortune. And then the final man, the survivor, the winner of this deadly game, he died too, alone. Jebediah had found his body, or what remained of it, after the animals and time had their way. Near the 3rd grave, which meant he'd buried his victims before, what? Guilt? Accident? The river itself? "I don't know how the last one died," Jebediah said, hurting voice. "No signs of violence on the remains, no weapon nearby. Maybe his heart gave out. Maybe he drank bad water. Maybe what?" Alara pressed. "Maybe the river took him. Maybe the curse is real. Maybe you can't take the silent river's gold and live. Maybe it demands payment." He laughed, a broken sound. "Or maybe I'm just insane and 3 men had bad luck in the same spot." "You don't believe that? In bad luck?" "No, I don't." He met her eyes. The gold wasn't just hidden, Ilara. It's cursed, cursed by the blood spilled to possess it. 3 men died with their hands stained red, and I took what they died for. I inherited their curse, and every day I wake up wondering if today's the day it comes for me. He told her about the paranoia, the sleepless nights, the sense of being watched, the way shadows moved wrong, the dreams where dead men demanded their gold back, the marks on the wall where he'd counted every time he'd checked his hiding spot, 2,317 times in the last 3 months alone, the knife under his pillow, the way he couldn't meet his own reflection because he didn't recognize the terrified animal staring back. "Where is it?" she asked quietly. I almost didn't answer. The paranoia screamed at him to lie, to protect his secret even now. But what was the point? She knew everything else. Under the floorboards, in the corner, 3 feet down, 27 pounds of pure gold nuggets, enough to buy a mansion, enough to live like a king for whatever years I have left, and I can't spend a single ounce of it, because the moment I do, people will ask where it came from. And then they'll come. They all will come, and I'll be the 4th grave by the silent river. The confession seemed to lift a physical weight off his shoulders. He sagged, suddenly looking every one of his 60-some years, looked at Ilara not as a threat anymore, but as the only other soul who knew the river's dark truth, who understood what it meant to be hunted by fortune. "Show me," she said quietly. "What?" "Show me the gold." Every alarm in his head went off, but he was too tired to fight, too emptied out by confession, too desperate for someone, anyone, to confirm that this was real, that he hadn't imagined it all, that there was actually something worth this nightmare he'd been living. He pried up the floorboards, dug through 3 feet of hard-packed earth with his bare hands, frantic now to needing to prove it. The oilcloth package came up dirty and heavy. He unwrapped it with shaking hands, and there it was, the gold. Nuggets ranging from pebble-sized to some as big as eggs, glittering in the lamplight. Beautiful, terrible, worth more than most men saw in a lifetime. Ilara stared at it, reached out slowly, touched one piece, lifted it, felt its weight. "My God," she whispered, "it's real. Did you think I was lying?" She thought, "I don't know what I thought. That maybe the paranoia had made you imagine it. That maybe you'd found a little gold and your mind inflated it into this. But this is real. This is a curse," Jebediah finished. "Don't you feel it? The weight of it? The wrongness?" She did. Even just touching one piece, she'd felt it. Cold, heavier than it should be, like it was pulling her down, pulling her toward a dark place she didn't want to go. "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know. I've been asking myself that for 3 months. Sell it and accept that I'll probably die in the process? Throw it back in the river? Bury it and walk away?" He laughed that broken laugh again. "I can't do any of those things. I've tried. I've stood at the river's edge a dozen times with a pouch in my hand, ready to throw it back. And I can't. Because it's mine. I found it. After 40 years of nothing, this is mine. Even if it kills you? Even then, what kind of sense does that make?" Ilara sat back, processing everything. 3 dead men, a cursed fortune, a man driven to the edge of madness by fear and greed, tangled together until you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. And now she was part of it. She knew the secret. She'd seen the gold. She was contaminated by it just like he was. "The crosses," she said suddenly. "Hope, trust, brotherhood. Someone carved those. Someone marked what died here." The last man, probably, before he died, marking what they'd lost in their greed.
Or warning anyone else who found this place what the cost would be.
She looked at Jebediah with something like pity.
You should have read those markers before you took the gold.
Would it have stopped you? If you'd spent 40 years searching, would you have walked away from this? She didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. No, she wouldn't have. Nobody would have. That was the thing about curses. They only worked because human nature made them inevitable. You couldn't place a curse on something people didn't want. The gold's curse wasn't supernatural. It was human. It was the darkness that lived in every heart, the part that whispered, "Mine," even when taking it would destroy you. They sat in silence for a long time, staring at the pile of gold between them. Finally, Ilara spoke. When I was little, my grandmother told me a story about a man who found a chest of gold coins in a cave. The gold belonged to spirits, and taking it meant trading your life for fortune. But the man took it anyway, bought a big house, fine clothes, threw parties, lived like a king for exactly 1 year. On the anniversary of the day he'd found it, he died. Just dropped dead at his own party, his wine glass still in his hand, and the gold, it vanished, every coin, like it had never existed. What's the moral? Don't take spirit gold? The moral is that some prices are too high. Some fortunes cost more than they're worth. She met his eyes. You are already paying, Jebediah. Have been for months. The question is whether you'll keep paying until there's nothing left of you, or whether you'll cut your losses while you still can. I can't just walk away from it. Then you'll die here. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but you'll die here. Another grave by the silent river, another warning that nobody will heed. Her words cut deep because they were true. He could feel it, the slow death he'd been dying, the way the fear had carved him hollow. He was already more ghost than man, and if he kept the gold, kept feeding his paranoia and terror, eventually there'd be nothing left but bones and regrets. But walking away, leaving 27 pounds of gold buried under his cabin floor, after 40 years, after everything, could he do it? Could any man? He didn't know. God help him, he didn't know. Outside, the sun was setting, the brief winter day dying into long darkness, and somewhere, miles away, the silent river waited under its blanket of ice, patient. It had all the time in the world. It had seen men like Jebediah before, seen them struggle, seen them fall. It would see it again. The river always got what it wanted in the end. Always. But something had changed in that cabin. Something subtle but profound. Jebediah had shared his secret. Ilara had touched the cursed gold and pulled her hand back. They'd both looked into the darkness and named it for what it was. Not treasure, not fortune, but poison. A beautiful, glittering poison that killed slowly, from the inside out. The question was, could they survive it? Or would the silent river's tally of graves grow by 2 more before spring came? The answer was coming, faster than either of them knew. Because while they'd been trapped in their cabin, struggling with curses and confessions, the world outside had been moving. And the men Ilara had fled, they hadn't given up. They'd been searching, waiting for winter to break, waiting for their chance. And they were close now, so close. The silent river was about to demand its payment, and blood, as always, would be the currency.
This is where everything ends, where choices become consequences, where debts come due. Pay attention now, because what I'm about to tell you is how greed, fear, and the cursed gold of the silent river finally collided. And when they did, the body count went up fast. The thaw came in late March, slowly, tentatively. The snow didn't melt so much as grudgingly retreat, 1 inch at a time. Water dripped from the roof. The frozen earth softened. Ice broke up in the river with sounds like distant gunfire. Hope returned with the first green shoots pushing through the mud. The world was coming back to life. Jebediah and Elar had survived the winter. Barely. They were both gaunt, hollow-eyed, worn down to their essential elements. But something between them had changed. The confession had created a strange bond. They weren't friends exactly. Too much fear and secrets for that. But they were allies. Two people who'd looked into the same darkness and both decided they wanted to survive it. Jebediah had stopped checking the gold every hour, stopped muttering to himself quite so much. The paranoia was still there, would always be there, but it had dulled from a screaming alarm to a constant, manageable dread. Elara's presence had helped. Having someone else to focus on, to protect, had given him something beyond the gold to think about. It had saved him in a way. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. They made plans, tentative, fragile plans about what would happen when the trails were passable again. Maybe they'd both leave, go to California or Oregon, somewhere far from the silent river, start over. Jebediah talked about maybe keeping just a few nuggets, enough to buy a small place, a fresh start. Leave the bulk of the cursed fortune buried. Cut his losses. Walk away while he still could. It was a good plan, a smart plan, a plan that might have actually worked if they'd had more time, if the world had given them just a few more weeks. But the silent river doesn't grant extensions, doesn't allow escapes, and time for Jebediah and Elara had just run out. It was mid-morning, the sun bright and warm, when they heard it. The sound of horses, multiple horses, moving through the forest, breaking branches, their hooves squelching in the mud. Not the sound of wild horses. Riders. Coming closer. Elara went white, actually pale as snow. Her hand flew to her mouth. No, it can't be. Who? Jebediah demanded, his hand already on his pistol. Them, the men, they found me. They rushed to the window. Through the trees, 3 riders emerged, hard-faced men in trail-worn clothes, heavily armed. They moved with the confidence of men who'd done violence before and expected to do it again. The leader was tall, with a scar running from his eye to his jaw. The other 2 flanked him, their rifles across their saddles, their eyes scanning the trees like wolves hunting. You know them? Jebediah whispered. The one in front, McCrae, he's... She couldn't finish. The terror in her eyes finished for her. The riders had spotted the cabin now. They angled toward it, not hurrying, not worried. Why would they be? 3 armed men against an old prospector and a woman. This would be easy. "We run," Jebediah said. "Out the back, now." "They'll catch us. They're on horses. We're on foot. There's nowhere to run." She was shaking, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. "They tracked me this far. They'll track us anywhere." "Then we hide. I know places." "Jebediah!" The voice came from outside, McCrae, loud and commanding. "We know you're in there. We know you got the girl. Come on out peaceful and nobody gets hurt. We just want to talk." Lies. They both knew they were lies. Men like that didn't track someone for months across the wilderness just to talk. "What do they want?" Jebediah hissed. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. It was Marcus, the man I was with. He stole from them. Money, I think. Maybe gold. He wouldn't tell me. They came for him and I was there and..." She broke. "They don't care that I didn't know. They think I was part of the deal. Think I know where he hid what he took. Or think I have it." "Do you?" "No! I ran with nothing. Just the clothes on my back. But they won't believe me. They'll..." She couldn't say it. McCrae called again. "Don't make this difficult, old man. Send out the girl and we'll leave you be. Otherwise, we come in, and we won't be gentle about it." Jebediah's mind raced. 3 armed men. He had 1 rifle, 1 pistol, and maybe 20 rounds of ammunition total. Ilara had nothing. If they tried to fight from the cabin, they'd be besieged. The men could just wait them out, or burn them out. If they ran, they'd be run down. If they surrendered Ilara, he'd seen the bruises when he'd found her, knew what men like that did to women they thought had crossed them. He looked at Ilara's terrified face, looked at the floorboards hiding the cursed gold, and something crystallized in his mind. A choice. Maybe the first real choice he'd made since finding the Silent River. He could protect the gold or protect her. Not both. The curse had always been about this moment, he realized. About what he'd choose when forced to decide between his fortune and his humanity. "I'm not giving you to them," he said quietly. "Then we're dead." Maybe. Or maybe, an idea formed. Terrible. Desperate. Possibly suicidal. But the only option he could see. "Do you trust me?" "Do I have a choice?" "No, but I'm asking anyway." She looked at him. Really looked at him, this old man who'd saved her life, who'd shared his last supplies, who'd confessed his darkest secrets, who was paranoid and broken and haunted by curses, but who was also, in this moment, the only thing standing between her and the monsters outside. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." He nodded, went to the door, opened it slowly, his hands visible and empty. McCrae and his men had dismounted. They stood 20 feet from the cabin, spread out, covering angles, professional, dangerous. "Gentlemen," Jebediah called, playing the simple prospector. "Bit of a misunderstanding here, I think." "No misunderstanding, old man. You got something that belongs to us. The girl ran off from our protection, got herself lost. We've been searching months. Now we found her. We'll just take her back, and you can go on about your business." "Protection," Jebediah snorted. "That's what you call those bruises she had? Some protection?" McCrae's smile vanished. "That's none of your concern. The girl is a thief. She and her man stole from us. We want what's ours." "She says she doesn't have anything." "She's a liar." Maybe she's telling the truth, and you're just too stubborn to accept you got robbed by a man who's long gone." Jebediah stepped fully outside, closing the door behind him. Ilara was still inside, safer there. For now. "But I'll tell you what, you seem like reasonable men who understand opportunity." McCrae's eyes narrowed. "What kind of opportunity?" "Well, you rode a long way for nothing, it seems to me. But what if you didn't leave empty-handed? What if there was something else around here worth your time?" "Like what?"
Here it was, the moment, the choice that would define everything. Jebediah thought of the 40 years he'd spent searching, the gold under his cabin, the curse that came with it, and he thought of Ilara, terrified and trapped. He thought of the 3 graves by the river, the warnings carved in wood, hope, trust, brotherhood, all dead. "Gold," he said simply. "Real gold. Color in the river about half a mile from here. I've been working it quiet-like. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to make your ride worthwhile." Greed flared in their eyes, instant, predictable, beautiful in its inevitability. "How much gold?" "More than you'd get from harassing a girl who doesn't have what you're looking for." He could see them calculating, weighing options. "Tell you what, I'll show you the spot. You can see for yourselves. If I'm lying, you shoot me and take the girl anyway. If I'm telling the truth, you got gold and you leave us both alone. Fair?" It wasn't fair. Nothing about this was fair, but fairness didn't matter. Only greed mattered. And greed was something Jebediah understood intimately now. He'd lived with it for months, knew its rhythms, its hunger, how it made men stupid. McCrae considered, then nodded. "Show us, but if this is a trick, old man, you'll die slow." "No trick, just trying to solve a problem peacefully." He turned toward the forest, toward the river. "Leave the girl. She's no threat. Just come with me." "Wilson stays with her," McCrae said. The smallest of the 3 men, but still dangerous, handed his horse's reins to the others and moved toward the cabin. Jebediah's heart sank. He'd hoped they'd all come, hoped to get them away from Ilara entirely. But this was still better than nothing. 2 men with him, 1 with her. Better odds than 3-0. They rode. Jebediah walked ahead, leading them through the forest. His mind raced. He had the rifle slung on his back, his pistol at his hip. 2 bullets against 2 men with repeating rifles. They'd kill him before he could draw if he tried anything now. He needed better odds, needed an advantage, needed the river. As they moved deeper into the forest, he deliberately led them on a longer route, making conversation, playing the simple prospector who'd gotten lucky, told them about finding color in the stream, how he'd been working it slow, how he was planning to leave come summer, take his modest findings and start over somewhere civilized. They half listened, their eyes scanning the forest, looking for ambush, but they were also looking at the ground, at the creek beds, watching for signs of gold. The greed was working on them, making them sloppy, making them believe. Finally, they reached the silent river. The ice had broken up, but chunks still floated in the sluggish current. The water was running high from melt, fast and cold, and there in the shallows, nuggets glinted in the afternoon sun. Jebediah had counted on this, the gold he hadn't taken, the fortune he'd left because he couldn't carry it all, the curse still waiting. "Sweet Jesus," one of the men whispered. He dismounted fast, moving to the water's edge, knelt down, reached in, pulled out a nugget the size of a walnut. "McCrae, this is real. This is the real thing." McCrae dismounted slower, his eyes never leaving Jebediah,
but even he couldn't completely resist. He moved to the bank, looked down at the gold thick in the shallows. How much? More than I could carry. Been pulling out a few pounds a week. There's more upstream, but I haven't explored fully. Why tell us? Why keep it for yourself? Because I'm old, because I'm tired, because gold's not worth dying for. Jebediah met his eyes. You want the girl because you think she has something of yours, but she doesn't. Let her go. Take the gold instead. Better deal for everyone. McCrae studied him, then smiled, slow and mean. Or we take the gold and the girl, and maybe your gold too, wherever you've got the rest hidden. There it was, the inevitability. Greed never took the reasonable option, always wanted more, always wanted everything. That would be a mistake, Jebediah said quietly. Why? Because you'll stop us? McCrae laughed. You're one old man with one old rifle. No, because the gold's cursed. 3 men died for it already, killed each other over it. Their graves are right over there. He pointed to the willows, the grave markers just visible. You take this gold, you inherit what they did. Cursed. McCrae laughed harder. You believe in curses, old-timer? I didn't until I found this place. Well, I don't believe in curses. I believe in gold. I believe in taking what I want. And right now, that's when Jebediah moved. Not toward them, toward the bank. He stumbled, his arms windmilling, his body falling toward the water. A clumsy old man losing his footing on the slippery rocks. Both men watched him fall, their weapons lowering for just a second, their attention divided. That second was all he needed. He hit the water deliberately, rolled, came up behind a boulder with his rifle already swinging off his shoulder, fired. The first man dropped, the bullet taking him in the chest. McCrae dove for cover, his own rifle coming up. Return fire cracked across the water. Jebediah ducked behind the boulder, water soaking him, the cold stealing his breath. This was it. This was where he would die. He was sure of it. One old man against a professional killer. The curse was coming for its payment, and he was the coin. But maybe the curse would take McCrae too. Maybe that was enough. Maybe Alara would survive, and one day she'd tell someone about the old prospector who died to save her from the men who'd hurt her. Maybe that's all the redemption he'd get. He popped up, fired again, missed. McCrae's return fire chipped rock inches from his head. Jebediah ducked back. His hands were numb from the cold water. His rifle held 3 shots. He'd used 2, 1 bullet left. And McCrae was moving, flanking him, getting an angle. This was it. The shot came. Not from McCrae, but from behind him. The man jerked, his eyes going wide. He turned, his rifle swinging toward this new threat. And there was Alara, standing at the tree line, Wilson's rifle in her hands, her face set in grim determination. Wilson must have followed them, or she'd fought him off. Either way, she was here. She'd come to help. And her second shot took McCrae in the shoulder, spinning him around. Jebediah's third and final bullet took him in the chest. The man fell into the river. The current caught him, pulled him downstream toward the deeper water where the gold lay thick, and the curse waited. Silence, except for the rush of water, the wind in the willows, and somewhere distant, maybe imagined, the sound of laughter, cold, mocking, ancient. The silent river had its payment. 3 more bodies to add to its collection. 3 more men who died for gold. Jebediah and Alara stood on opposite banks, staring at each other across the water, across the bodies, across the glittering fortune that had cost so much. He was soaked and shaking, she was pale and trembling, but they were alive, impossibly, improbably alive. "Wilson," Jebediah called across the water. Dead. I hit him with the firewood. He wasn't expecting." She didn't finish, didn't need to. They met back at the cabin. Neither spoke. What was there to say? They'd killed 3 men. Self-defense, survival, call it what you want. They were still dead, and the gold was still there, still waiting, still cursed. Jebediah looked at the floorboards, at the fortune buried beneath, the fortune he'd been willing to die for just hours ago, the fortune that had almost gotten both of them killed. He thought about the graves, 6 now, 6 men dead for the silent river's gold. How many more before someone finally learned? He made his choice. He dug up the gold, all of it, every pouch, every nugget, every ounce of cursed fortune, carried it to the river in trips, Ilara helping. They stood at the bank where McCrae's body had disappeared downstream, and together they threw it back, pouch after pouch. 27 pounds of gold nuggets tossed into the current, sinking back to the riverbed where they'd come from. 40 years of searching, months of paranoia and fear, a fortune that could have bought mansions and comfort and everything he'd ever wanted. Gone, given back to the river, given back to the curse. And as the last pouch disappeared beneath the water, Jebediah felt something lift. The weight he'd been carrying since that first sunset when he'd found this place. The shadow that had clung to him, the fear that had become his constant companion. It didn't disappear completely, would never disappear completely, but it lessened, became bearable. He looked at Ilara. "We need to leave. Now. Before anyone finds the bodies. Before anyone asks questions." She nodded. They went back to the cabin, packed what little they had, supplies, blankets, tools, set fire to the cabin to cover their tracks, watched it burn, that tiny prison where they'd spent a winter trapped with secrets and terror. The smoke rose black against the blue sky. Together they walked away from the silent river, away from the graves, the curse, the fortune that demanded blood. They walked south, toward civilization, toward some place where they could disappear, start over, maybe find something like peace. They never looked back, not once. Behind them, the silent river flowed on. Its gold lay thick in the shallows, glittering in the sun, waiting for the next prospector, the next desperate man, the next soul who'd trade everything for fortune. The graves stood silent among the willows, 6 warnings that no one would heed, because greed is stronger than wisdom, always has been, always will be. The silent river keeps its secrets, and its body count grows. One day someone else will find it. Someone always does. They'll see the gold, their heart will pound, they'll laugh with triumph. They'll gather the nuggets into pouches and think they've won. And the river will smile and wait. And when the time comes, it will take its payment. It always does. The end. But not really the end, because the silent river never ends. The curse never dies. The gold waits forever. And human nature never changes. Someone will come, someone will take, someone will die. And the river will keep its silence until the next time, and the time after that, and every time after, forever and ever. Amen. That's the story of old Jebediah and the silent river. He was one of the lucky ones. He walked away. He survived. But he left something behind in that wilderness, something more than gold. He left his dreams, his 40 years of hope, the future he'd imagined. He traded it all for survival, for redemption, for the chance to die as something more than another grave by a cursed river. Was it worth it? Ask him on his deathbed, years later, with Elara by his side in some small town nobody's heard of. Ask him if he regrets throwing away a fortune. Ask him if he thinks about the gold sometimes, in the quiet moments, wondering what might have been. He'll tell you yes, he thinks about it, he regrets it, and he'd do it again. Every time. Because some prices are too high. Some fortunes cost more than they're worth. And surviving with your soul intact, that's the only treasure that matters. The silent river doesn't agree. But then again, the river doesn't have a soul anymore. It traded that away long ago for gold and blood and an eternity of silence. Listen, can you hear it? That distant sound of water over rocks? That's the silent river, calling out to anyone who'll listen, promising fortune, promising dreams, promising everything you've ever wanted. Don't listen. Walk away, because the silent river lies. It always has. It always will.
And somewhere, right now, someone's finding it for the first time, seeing the gold, feeling their heart pound, making their choice. The river waits, patient, eternal, hungry, and the body count grows.